Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Royal Blue podcast. I'm your host, Conor O'Neill, joined today by Chris Beesley and Gavin Buckland as we look back on Everton's disappointing 2-0 defeat to Manchester United at Old Trafford on Saturday afternoon, as well as looking back on the game as a whole. We'll also reflect on the change Sean Dyche made in formation and set up at Old Trafford, and of course look at the bigger relegation picture after, I think it's safe to say, a weekend of interesting results at the foot of the table. Chris, you and I were both at Old Trafford on Saturday for the big game. Everton went there high in confidence, I think, after the Monday night draw against Tottenham, which extended their unbeaten run to 4 games under Sean Dyche. But in the end, they were lucky to come away with just a 2-0 defeat.
Yeah, and I was speaking to both Gavin and Paul Wheelock on Friday when we were previewing the game. And to be fair, we were in good spirits. Everton were 4 games unbeaten. And okay, Old Trafford has been anything but a happy hunting ground for Everton for a very long time now. There's feeling that Everton could get something from this fixture. United in a busy period, still fighting on 4 fronts in the big Europa League game against Sevilla to come. So we knew Erik ten Hag could maybe shuffle his pack a bit, but yeah, even so, they proved more than a match for Everton. It was very disappointing. It was in many ways. And unfortunately, a sort of typical meek surrender at Old Trafford for Everton that we've seen too many of those over the years. And like you say, Jordan Pickford's heroics at least brought respectability to the scoreline, but they were carved open on numerous occasions, and it really could have been on another day a very damaging result, both in terms of morale from a heavy defeat and what that could do to the goal difference. Because if Pickford hadn't been on the top of the game, could have easily been about 6-0 there. So, and unfortunately, we were sort of relieved to just have a damage limitation, like say a more respectable looking 2-0 scoreline, but hugely disappointing nevertheless.
Gav, I'm going to come on to the game more in depth shortly, but just overall, reaction. Chris is right there, isn't it? It could have been a really downing afternoon for Everton if Manchester United would have took the chances.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a stat that came on the screen after 18 minutes, I think, that said that United had already had 8 attempts on goal, which is after 18 minutes is you don't want to see that. And, we'll talk about tactics and stuff, but I just thought, we spoke about the various permutations open to Dyche on Saturday. We spoke about them on Friday, and I don't recall anybody saying 4-4-2. To be honest with you, and I think that was really the main. Aside from the fact I don't think the players were after, for want of a better phrase, I found the tactical setup at the start baffling. To be honest with you.
Chris, Gav says they're baffling.
Yeah.
I think raised eyebrows from me, you, and Joe Thomas in the Old Trafford press box when we realised, in a couple of minutes there, we're playing 4-4-2, and Sean Dyche had completely ripped up what has become the norm since he took out, since his first game back in February, and gone with something new. Was you surprised to see such a drastic change made by the Everton boss?
Yeah, a little bit, because I suppose when we got when it was Ellis Sims coming into the lineup, it might have even retained the 4-5-1. They could have moved Gray back onto the wing and put Iwobi in the middle and retained that system, which he's used throughout his time at Everton. I suppose we were all sort of surprised when he first went 4-5-1 over 2 months ago, given that he'd predominantly gone with 4-4-2 in 9.5 years at Burnley. But after the relative success that he's had with it at Everton and the fact that he's been able to keep things compact and tight, to go to Old Trafford and go 4-4-2, and when they've nominally got 3 in the middle as well, even without Casemiro, and getting totally overrun, and obviously the pace they've got on the break as well. They were ripped open on far too many occasions. It was a bold move, and I just wonder whether it was made. I mean, Everton can't sort of discount fixtures. There's certainly no free hits there. I sort of wonder now whether it was sort of made, well, see how we do here, and we can build on this and go with this way against Fulham. But against Manchester United, it was ruthlessly exposed. So we were surprised, really, and it just left Everton overwhelmed in key areas. And like we said, it's been well documented that the Opta stats, the most shots since they started recording those sort of statistics in the first half. So yeah, it backfired. I guess the big question is now: does he persist with it, given that Doucoure's got another couple of games out suspended, or does he go back to the drawing board for the next game?
We are going to come on to that, but Gav, was you equally as surprised as everyone? I think that Sean Dyche opted to go 4-4-2, given it was Manchester United away, given they played three in midfield, and given Everton have been known not to have much legs at times so far this season.
You've answered there. You give my answer there, Chris. It's just baffling. I mean, the one thing watching Everton over the last 5 or 6 years for me is whenever we have two in midfield rather than three, we've got problems. And that goes back to Marco Silva's days, and it was obviously there in Ancelotti, who's a 4-4-2 merchant, is that we allow ourselves to be outmanoeuvred in midfield. I remember Carlo played two midfield at Chelsea before lockdown in March 2020. He played two against Chelsea's three. We got murdered 4-0. And the key thing within there, and that showed to me again on Saturday, and one of my hobby horses is we haven't got a natural number 6. And that was quite obvious on Saturday. If you play 4-4-2, I always think you need a natural 6 just to protect the back four and to snuff out any danger. And we haven't got a natural 6. Garner Gay isn't a natural 6, and Arne Seen isn't a natural 6. And consequently, we can get away with it when we got 3 in midfield because you've got the numbers there. But if you've got 2 in midfield, your lack of a natural number 6 is going to work against you. And that's for me was quite apparent on Saturday. What I was surprised with is knowing full well after 20 minutes, as I say, United had had 8 attempts on goal at that stage. At that stage, why didn't Dyche change it then? Why wait till half time? Why don't you put Iwobi into the middle, move Gray out wide, and then just leave Sims on his own? Why wait till half time to change things? That was the other surprise for me. It was obviously not working after 20 minutes. Change it then.
In terms of just to stick with you there, Gavin, in terms of surprise, do you think that was Saturday was the first real kind of black mark against Sean Dyche since he's come in? Obviously, there's been a lot of plaudits thrown his way, a lot of kinds of credit, but I know it's the players weren't exactly the race themselves, but to me that genuinely felt like it was all on the manager that defeat because he set the team up wrong and he paid the price.
I think the players didn't apply themselves. I mean, it was also one of their worst days, wasn't it? Really, and some of that was down to playing a high line, which sort of magnified the tactical error. I think so. I mean, it was the first half was pretty similar against Arsenal, wasn't it? We played it fast and loose for half an hour and then got caught out just before half time. And it was a little bit like that on Saturday, I think. I mean, because we had quite a lot of attempts ourselves, didn't we, on Saturday? I think, only one on target.
Which is in the Premier League that weekend.
Yeah, which shows you what the type of game that we got ourselves into. But we're never going to win a game like that against the big team because the big team's got more firepower. And that was the mistake that was made. And I think that combination of the tactical setup, playing a high line, which you just didn't get, and they quite rightly took advantage of that, and then not changing it quickly enough contributed towards it. But I think, United definitely the worst. The worst.
In terms of the high line there, what Gav says, in terms of the way Man United exploited Everton's weaknesses. Seamus Coleman obviously gave a goal away. Yeah. It was a fault for Anthony Martial's goal. United second. Yeah. But unfortunately, Ben Godfrey on the other side subbed to half time, endured a torrid 45 minutes where quite simply he was just chasing after Anthony for the fell of the first half.
Yeah, I think there was one that, to be fair, he did made a great last ditch tackle, but apart from that, it was difficult because it's been when Godfrey's brought a new element really to the position. Mikalenko been in there for most of the season, and then was it the Forest game when Godfrey came back to start this unbeaten run, to be fair, and
Mikalenko was sick, wasn't he?
He was sick that day, and has been on the bench ever since. He's obviously a lot more athletic than Mikalenko, a lot more sort of robust, offers more physicality. But I think one of the things we were saying on Saturdays, see at times he's very wary about using his left foot, and that can get him into trouble as well. It's difficult because he had the toy time. He got the hook at half time, and then Seamus held his hand up for the mistake for the second. But it'd be interesting now what Dyche does in terms of Patterson and Mikalenko both knocking on the door there. But does he necessarily? I don't know if he has to change it. It's very difficult circumstances. Like we said, the pace of United on the break, Rashford, Anthony, and the way they just swarm forward. And Jadon Sancho as well, who was playing as well. Very difficult, and a combination. It was like a bad combination of, like we say, the tactics being wrong, and also the players themselves not being at the races. I mean, I made a point of it in my analysis afterwards, and I'm certainly not giving away private conversations. And I didn't say what Graham Stewart had said in response, but a number of former pros had come up to him after that game, and they were very down and just about how straightforward that was for Manchester United on the day. And we can say and pontificate as much as we want, but we're ultimately laymen. So for former top flight professionals to come out and say, that wasn't good enough from Everton, that's about as damning as it goes for when your fellow pros are calling you out. I
think as well, look, one of the big issues again on Saturday was just how easy Everton conceded, wasn't it? Individual mistakes, not tracking runners. You look at the goals Everton have conceded in recent weeks. They get to concede one where you think the opposition has absolutely played them off the park or produced a moment of magic. A lot of the time, Everton have been at the front of their own downfall.
Yeah. I mean, the second goal it happens, doesn't it? I mean, there's inevitability once Martial came on the pitch that he was going to score. He's just one of them players, isn't he? But the first goal I think we had 8 players in and around the box, didn't we? And not one of them deigned to put a challenge in or to clear anybody out. And then we had that, an Arnett, who I thought was average at best on Saturday. I thought he was poor, one of his worst games. Just not for the first time this season, let's a midfield run attack, run past them. And this time, right in our box, and once you do that, you're really vulnerable. And McTominay, you give him. It was frustrating that if you Pickford having denied United so many good chances with his own heroics to concede one where our defence was clearly a fault, both collectively and individually in Arna's case, and that was frustrating, really. And the Coleman one, as I say, that just happens. I mean, it was a miracle we were only getting beat 1-0 after 70 minutes, really.
I think, obviously, we're going to come on to it now. I think Amendola fallout from Abdoulaye Doucoure's red card against Tottenham. Obviously, there was plenty of backlash against the way Harry Kane reacted and stuff like that. But obviously, the big concern for a lot of Evertonians was who replaced him, where Everton went from there for the 3 games that followed.
Yeah.
Obviously, we saw on Saturday Sean Dyche brought Ellis Sims back into the team and changed formation. After on Saturday, where do Everton go from here? Because they've still got 2 more games to go without Abdoulaye Doucoure, and they got 2 huge games in Fulham at home and Crystal Palace away.
Yeah, like I said, it's difficult because you're not necessarily going to get the same level of threat from other opponents as you are from Manchester United. But that whoever had been the opponents over this 2-month period, Everton had this what had become a tried and trusted 4-5-1 formation. So you would perhaps be inclined to go back to that in terms of I don't know whether possibly Fulham at home might be the one where somebody like Iwobi could go back into central midfield rather than a James Garner who we'd kind of, as a consensus on Friday, thought we'd go with above Tom Davis, but they'd be the 2 natural ones for central midfielder. Yeah, it's strange, really, isn't it? Because as I was saying, it's been Dyche's bread and butter for 9.5 years. He didn't always play that way, but predominantly went 4-4-2. But it just seems like it was the wrong game to implement that. It'd be a key call, of course, to see what he does, because we're going to discuss this on the next pod, I guess, coming forward to the weekend. But Fulham always was a must-win for Everton, and it certainly is now. So whether he does go more positive for that, or perhaps just stick with the 4-5-1, because that it has produced victories at home so far under his reign, albeit in the sort of different circumstances.
Gav, was you almost surprised of how much Everton missed Abdoulaye Doucoure on Saturday? Obviously, starts the season, for large parts of the season, he's found himself frozen out by Frank Lampard and didn't get a look in. Looked like he was going to leave in January, and then Frank was sacked, and he remained and became a mainstay under Sean Dyche. Was you surprised how much Everton kind of missed his energy and missed his presence in the middle of the midfield?
I don't think I could say anything really on that, because we played a completely different system from when he was in the team. If we'd have played 4-5-1 and Iwobi had played in there, I could have made an assessment of whether we'd missed Doucoure or not. But 4-4-2 it's a completely different system. It's a meeting two vets system, isn't it, really?
Does that highlight that maybe
why we missed him?
In the sense of he wasn't convinced anyone could offer what Doucoure does. We chose the best way to try and fix it was to change formation completely.
Yeah, on that basis, that actually the fact that we went to 4-4-2 highlighted that we missed them even before we got on the pitch. Yeah, no, I think that's a fair comment, but it's a bit like Calvert-Lewin here, isn't it? We've got. Doucoure is a decent Premier League central midfielder, is he? He's not peak Brian Robson, is he? To be honest with you. And it's slightly worrying that Calvert-Lewin is, you take one player, and it's a reflection really on the lack of depth we've got in the squad, isn't it, really? That taking one player who is okay, he's a decent Premier League midfielder, he's on a decent run of form, affects us so significantly. That's the concern for me, rather than just Doucoure's absence per se. And that we've had to make, 3 positional changes to counter that, and I just think that that was the concern, rather than it being on the pitch missing Doucoure. It was just the fact that Dyche had to completely deconstruct the team to try and make something work. Where I think one of the options we said on Friday about playing Iwobi or Garner, James Garner there would have been better. But we've got to be careful here. Doucoure's okay, isn't he? But he's not a whale-beaten midfielder, is he? He's just on a decent run of form. But also as well shows, we said about this on Friday, didn't we, Chris? Is within the furore over Harry Kane, what a completely unprofessional and dangerous act that was by Doucoure, wasn't it? And that showed that up, hasn't it? We're talking about saying Dyche used the wrong tactics, and the players perhaps didn't get used to them properly, and didn't perform. One of these didn't perform, but ultimately a lot of that falls at Doucoure's doorstep, doesn't it? Really, he's caused it by amateurish behaviour at Goodison.
Totally,
and a key moment in the season.
Bees, in terms of Tom Davies and James Garner, obviously they sat there on Saturday watching the change of formation, the changes that Sean Dyche made to his team. If you're them today, you must be kicking your heels and a little bit frustrated that you're not given the nod to come in and go like for like and replace what's been the norm since Sean Dyche kicked off his Everton reign.
Yeah, it must be disappointing for those two lads, given that they're both natural central midfielders. I mean, we've been talking about it all season, the balance of the midfield. I know it's something Gav's particularly vexed about, in that he doesn't think the balance is right. But we know neither of those would be anything close to like-for-like replacements for Doucoure, but they were central midfielders who both come off the bench and contributed to varying degrees in the latter stages against Tottenham Hotspur. So for neither of them to have got the nod for what we thought would be the least disruptive change, continuing the 4-5-1 and putting central midfielder in for a central midfielder, albeit one that offered different attributes. So it's got to be disappointing for them, because neither of them have had a lot of minutes this season. Obviously, James Garner's come in from Manchester United. That was another thing. I thought maybe he'd want to have extra incentive to do well against his former employers. And obviously he's had the injuries. So yeah, for those two, it's almost like perhaps doesn't trust them, and the fact that he's willing to bring in a different player in a different position rather than bring in somebody who would continue the 4-5-1 with.
I think as well, Gav, in terms of, Chris said there, they both be disappointed. If you're Tom Davies, obviously, his contract's up in the summer. This is almost kind of feels like it's leading to one conclusion, doesn't it, in terms of he's not going to get a look in that much, not given a chance when, it was a golden opportunity for him to be maybe given the nod. It's all kind of feels like it's leading one way, doesn't it, come the summer?
Well, in terms of Tom Davies not getting his contract renewed?
Yeah,
I would think so. Though, to be fair, the club has said there's a few players in that position where I think there's an acknowledgement is that because of our position in the table, we're not making any decisions. I would have thought, I'm not party to what's happened previously, but you would imagine if they were going to keep Tom Davies, they would have renewed his contract last year, possibly. I mean, yeah, and if you're thinking, if I'm going to get a game in the first team, today's the day, isn't it really? To be honest with you, and the fact he didn't probably means that Dyche probably doesn't trust him. I would imagine with James Garner, his lack of match fitness maybe came into him not being selected, possibly. But yeah, if you're Davis and another one there's Mopay, isn't it?
Well, of course, yeah.
Yeah, you're playing 4-4-2 and you've got a £15 million striker and you're not playing him as in the two. And so if you're Mopay, you'd be thinking, what am I doing here? So yeah, it raises some questions, doesn't it, about some players' futures, but also, as I said, going back to my previous bit about the lack of options that Dyche has got really outside his tried and trusted, say, first 11 or 12 players.
Bees, in terms of the weekend's game, Gav just touched on it, in terms of the questions and stuff like that. It almost felt like an afternoon where more questions than answers were raised, doesn't it? You come away from there, we've discussed a few of them here, but there's so many kind of Monday afternoons where a lot of things just come to the fore of your mind where you think, oh, this and that. And it was one of them days where there was more questions than answers.
Yeah, fortunately, like we've already mentioned, Jordan Pickford masterclass. People, rightly so, talk about the way that Ramsdale performed at Anfield yesterday in what was a high-profile fixture. But yeah, if it hadn't been for Jordan Pickford's heroics, I've already said it could have been, a very damaging defeat rather than as much as we're disappointed now. Respectability has actually been maintained, but yeah, there are now question marks. I mean, I'm not too sure. I mean, personally, I'd probably actually stick with them because, like I say, did Manchester United offer a certain threat? But no, there are question marks there, or the centre backs, or whether he continues with the 4-4-2. Because, as we said, it Fulham always was, a must-win fixture, and just how Everton cope without Abdoulaye Doucoure, because not just Fulham, of course, there's Crystal Palace, another away game the other week, and obviously we're glad. I guess we're glad that they won against Leeds United so emphatically there. I mean, sort of they're moving away now from a couple of weeks before Uncle Roy came back. They looked like they were in the thick of it. They've moved away, so I guess it was good that they defeated Leeds United. But of course, going to there, I mean, what do Everton do? A revitalised Crystal Palace in less than a couple of weeks' time now. So yeah, like you said, there's a lot of questions to come out of that game with.
Gavin, in terms of Bees touched on it there, but Palace went to come from behind at Ellen Road on Sunday and win 5-1. He's obviously wins for Wolves, Bournemouth, and
West Ham.
Yeah. Obviously, Leicester were beaten, Southampton were beaten, Everton were beaten, and Forest were obviously beaten by Aston Villa as well over the weekend. I think it was one of them weekends and sets of results where if we needed any more proof that this relegation battle was going to the very wire, it was one of them. Yeah.
I was thinking it to be, that Jeff Boycott thing, and when he's watching a team batting, and he always said, you think you're doing well when you're batting, but are you doing that well if you had 2 wickets to your score? And I think that's a little bit what it's like at the bottom of the Premier League at the moment, isn't it? You think you're doing okay, but if you don't get any points in 2 successive games, the position changes completely, doesn't it? And we're sort of getting into that territory, aren't we, with Everton? That we've got a point against Spurs. we got beat on Saturday, and then it's all on Fulham, isn't it? Really, we need to pick up points. We don't want 2 consecutive defeats because that can be really damaging. And you've seen that a few times this season. And the opposite, the other way is if you have 2 consecutive wins. Look at Palace. West Ham have won 2 out of 3, haven't they?
Yeah.
And it's topsy-turvy. I don't know. We want Palace to win whoever they're playing, don't we, at the weekend? Because you want them to have 36 points before they play us, maybe sort of take the foot off the gas. But, yeah, you're right. I'm not sure whether there's 9 teams involved now. I think you can probably write Palace off, can't you? I think they probably only need maybe 1 win and maybe a draw or so, possibly Wolves. It's looking like maybe 3 from 5. Maybe
I'd say 6.
at the moment. Yeah, 3 from 5 or 6. I think there's probably 3 teams who may think, that we've done enough over the last fortnight or so to stay up. I think, and again, you're looking at the somebody said that was it last week, of the 86 games that the bottom 9 had to play, there was 18 matches where they're playing against each other. 2 of the teams are playing against each other, so that's a lot of it's a lot of competitive games there, isn't it? And a lot of points that are going to be won automatically. So yeah, it just shows you the topsy-turvy nature of it. And the fact that actually, we'll obviously talk about it later on in the week, this Fulham game looks absolutely massive, doesn't it, really? At the weekends when I think Leicester are at Man City, aren't they, and Forest play Man United at home?
Yes.
Yeah, so you're looking at, you've got to pick up a win on Saturday to take advantage of that, because at some point we play City at home, don't we? Play Newcastle at home. And it is funny. And also as well, how some fixtures, we always say this, don't we, on the pod, saying it for years, is fixtures a month away that look hard, a month later are a bit easy, and the opposite way round, isn't it? So Fulham looks easier now than what it did a month ago, but Palace looks a lot harder.
Bees, I'll ring you in on the whole fixture debate, because I think what Gav was trying to say there is that you can think you're in for an easy ride and then end up getting caught cold and think you're going to be in for a tough afternoon and things quieten down. I think that is the case if you look at Everton's upcoming fixtures to the end of April. Yeah. What it's going to be like, isn't it? You look at Newcastle just found form, Fulham have slipped off, but Everton can't take nothing for granted because it's all on them to get themselves out of trouble.
Yeah, it's so close, as we're saying, and that's a good point that Gav makes about the amount of head-to-heads that come up. So there's inevitably somebody.
I think there's at least one relegation, what we call 6-pointer, from I think it was last weekend, so the final weekend of the season every week.
Wow. So there's no let up, and that shows you got to look after yourself, aren't you? And keep yourself ticking over. And that was always the hope with Dyche, that you're going to do better than at least 3 other teams. That's got to be the hope, and that's what we've got to put our faith in, that they can do that. But yeah, it's absolutely massive, the Fulham game. You can't preempt anything, but at the same time, we've had all these. Dyche in recent weeks has had to go to various grounds that have been awful, have been absolute stinkers for Everton for a long time. Anfield, Arsenal away, Chelsea away, Manchester United away. On the flip side of that, we all know that apart from when it was coronavirus and behind closed doors, Everton almost always beat Fulham at home. So, like I say, you can't be confident, you can't be cocky, you can't be complacent. But you've got to go into it with a positive mindset and hope that Everton can get the points next weekend, because they really need to do.
Gavin, in terms of the relegation battle and where things stand, it's almost now as well, isn't it? If Everton were to slip into the bottom 3 at one point, which doesn't look beyond the realms of possibility, that you can't get too down, disheartened, and think it's all over. You've got to dust yourself off and go again, because, like we've seen, you can quite frankly go from second bottom to 15th off the back of 1 result for yourself and 2 results going elsewhere, going for you elsewhere.
Yeah, it's that mad stat up until a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it? Isn't it? When you were safer playing the team in 8th than the team at the bottom of the table. Statistically, in terms of the amount of points that you could lose, you're more likely to lose them against a team bottom of the table than 8th position. Yeah, and it can change. It's just that it's the margins are becoming tighter now, aren't they? And I think the positive side is to say that when we were in the office, it'd be about a month ago before the Forest game, and you're thinking we got Forest away, that's tough. Brentford, that's going to be tough, and then these 3 against the so-called Big Six, and we got 4 points from the Forest and Brentford games, and then you're thinking any that we get from the Big Six, and we managed to get from the 3 games, we managed to get 2 points. So in that context, we've done pretty well, I would say, out of a really difficult set of fixtures there. But to take advantage of that, you've got to get, these next 3 games. I think Newcastle will be difficult. Obviously, Fulham, Palace, Newcastle, you're looking at, ideally, you'd want, possibly 5 points from those 3 matches, I think, would be par for the course, which would then take us to 32 from 33 games, is it? So you're in with the shout then. You're looking, and we just need 2 wins possibly from 5 matches. So it's always look on the bright side of life and stuff. And you're always going to be in a position to think where you can get it back over the next few weeks. But you want to get in a position where, like sort of Crystal Palace are, don't you really? Where you just need a win or 2, and that starts on Saturday.
Just one other thing these I want to talk about, because I think eyebrows were certainly raised over the weekend. Well, me, you were certainly surprised when it emerged that Jesse Marsch was the front runner to take over at Leicester.
Yeah.
Obviously, that last night looked like it's dead in the water, and it now appears that Dean Smith is going to go in the interim until the end of the season at Leicester. Is that a sign, do you think, that almost Everton done the right thing in January? Okay, it didn't work out the way people wanted to with Frank, but they got rid of Frank Lampard and brought in the best player for the job in terms of trying to keep them up, and B, the worst comes to worst and they go down, someone who knows what it takes to get back out the Championship into the Premier League at the first attempt, that they were ahead of a lot of the other clubs, because now you look at clubs who sack managers and stuff, it seems like they're chasing the tails, and a lot of them don't really know where to go and who to turn to next. Unfortunately,
let's hope it doesn't come to this. But I've been on record already saying that I think that Sean Dyche would be the right man for Everton, regardless of the Premier League or the Championship. Let's not think of that, but of course it's a possibility. But I don't know where Everton would have gone if they hadn't gone with Dyche. They were going down under Frank Lampard. I'm convinced of that. Totally convinced of that. And look, we've gone in at Chelsea. They all love him there. We talked about that on Friday. He got beat. Let's hope he can actually do Everton some favours between now and the end of the season. Not put Everton into a mess by not picking up points where Chelsea would be expected to do against some of the strugglers. But they'd be scraping around. I don't know who they could have gone for. I think that Dyche is a very good fit for Everton. I think that a football snobbery has prevented him from getting the job in the past, and it's taken Everton to be at the lowest ebb for him to come in. And regardless of what division they're in next season, I think he's the man to turn it around. I just hope, obviously, we all desperately hope, because of all the, I wouldn't know where to start from a financial point of view if they weren't in the Premier League. But it certainly wouldn't have been as straightforward as the way Burnley, of his former club, have bounced back under very different circumstances this season under Vincent Kompany. But I don't know. I think it suggests that if it is Smith going in at Leicester and Jesse Marsch, it's all fallen through. I mean, I certainly wouldn't have been happy with Everton taking on an appointment like that. And it's almost like it's actually similar to Burnley last season, where they got rid of Dyche, which was on Good Friday last season, but I don't think we've actually reached the anniversary of that yet, when they got rid of him and brought Mike Jackson in, the Scouser, actually, because it's almost like, well, we're just going to gamble now. We'll just see if some sort of severe reaction.
New manager
just does a bounce, and it did for a time actually with Burnley. But it's desperate stakes now, I think, for anyone who changes the manager, who goes with it from between now and the end of the season.
No, Gav, just to finish up there, Chris says it's desperate stakes, and when you're looking at Hodgson going back at Palace, Javi Garcia coming in on what's described as a flexible contract at Leeds, Dean Smith is an interim at Leicester, Gary O'Neill thinks on a short contract at Bournemouth, just these last few weeks shows us how important it is to stay in the Premier League and how everyone is fighting tooth and nail to avoid relegation, because all clubs know the damage what being out the top flight does, even if it's just for one season.
Yeah, well, I think some more than others. Some bounce between the Premier League and Championship, don't they? That's sort of part of the business plan, isn't it? You know, it's for the well-established Premier League clubs near the bottom, which I would imagine would include Leicester, ourselves, West Ham. In that group, you know, that we're in the ones in the most danger, aren't we? Because we have a business model set up for the Premier League. I'm not sure whether Bournemouth would do. For example, Notts Forest, well, imagine money Notts Forest to spend, possibly. Yeah, it just shows you. I mean, I spoke about this on Connor on Friday, you know, that at the time, the Dyche appointment, we were saying quite rightly, I think, and understand me saying that looked quite late in the season, but actually what's shown is actually it's relatively early.
Gav Davies.
Compared to everybody else.
Anything in all? The Dyche appointments and the whole feeling around. Is he back? He's back.
Go on. Let him.
Sorry, Gav, we just lost you there. Going to carry on.
Yeah, that's just, as I normally say, like most sense I've ever spoken on a podcast I've just said, and you've missed it. Yeah. No, I think, I said on Friday, just to repeat the answer, Connor, is that the appointment of Dyche, we said, looked quite late. You know, compared to when it should have been made, but compared to how other clubs have changed managers, it looks relatively early, doesn't it? Really, and I think we've had the benefit of that. How other, you know, how you can change things now in the space of 4 or 5 games is again, I find really difficult. I don't understand that thinking, and it's just being, as you say, it's just desperation stakes in some clubs. And you think if you got rid of somebody at this stage of the season, you'd have somebody lined up. But for a lot of clubs, that doesn't appear to be the case, does it?
And even if the ones who appear to have people lined up, it's the same old names, isn't it? There's no one really fresh and new out there. It's, you know, people like Mr. Rafa Benitez and a few other names like that, isn't it? Who are just kind of loitering around, waiting for that next opportunity to come. Yeah,
absolutely. It's just, I always go back to what Martin Jol said when he was manager of Fulham at the Premier League, that once you stick away the veneer of the hype and the, you know, all that type of stuff and the entertainment and billion down contracts, is the Premier League, a lot of it's run in a very amateurish way. And you see that at this stage of the season, don't you? It's just amateurs, isn't it?
It's not very progressive, is it? In terms of, let's say, it's like you're not bringing in the next David Moyes, as you know, what the way Everton did when he was 38 or something. It's just same old names, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just I don't understand of like you're sacking somebody, but you've got nobody to replacement when you've only got like 8 games left or whatever. It just seems daft. And it is a massive gamble. It's just been. I mean, I don't think we've seen the last of the departures, have we? I think if you were Steve Cooper, you'd possibly
is possibly hanging on by a thread, given
the
reaction of the West Ham fans. Even when they won on Saturday, they had a ban out to the same boys out, and there was a few certainly not impressed even after a 1-0 half 4-0.
I think Moyes should be going, won't he? Anyway, it's just a question of when. But it just seems so amateurish to me that these are professional outfits. And let's face it, we've been guilty of some of these behaviours. That they're just making it up as they go along. To be fair,
right, gents. I think we will leave things there. I think we've chewed the fat enough over Everton's defeat to Manchester United and the relegation picture in the Premier League as a whole. We will, of course, be back on Friday to look back on Sean Dyche's pre-Fulham press conference. And, of course, look ahead to that huge game at Goodison Park on Saturday afternoon as Everton welcome former boss Marco Silva and his Fulham side to the Old Lady. But for now, thank you very much for listening to the Royal Blue podcast.